We have a lot of stuff to talk about with Barrett. How are you, sir?
I'm good. A little busy because we have sort of a normal college football off-season week where we actually have content. And the Braves still can't hit. So a lot going on, that's for sure.
Yeah,
if you're watching the Braves, not a lot in terms of offense. But either way.
That is true. But, Braves fans not going to get sympathy from this Mets fan when it comes to their offensive woes. We just had a pitcher throw his glove into the stands, then say he was either the worst teammate or the Mets were the worst team. Both of those could be true in Major League Baseball. Yeah, it's hard to debate. It's hard to argue with the latter there, too. And they just outright released him, which, fine. I mean, I'm sure he'll be as good as the next guy they ultimately have to outright release. So it's been a rough go for. There was a time this year I thought the Mets might actually be competent. They were a few games over 500, went to L.A. and took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers, and then have completely fallen apart since then. But that's not why I called you, Barrett. Let's
that was spring training, wasn't it? That was like not.
No. That was real. No, go look it up. The internet is a wonderful thing.
I don't believe you.
The internet is a wonderful thing. Believe it. It caught me by surprise, too. I'm like, wait a second. The Mets have won 2 out of 3 in L.A., and they were a couple of games over 500. Since then, they're terrible and not really worth discussing. But let's dig into the Braves real quick, because for the second time in, 4 years, they lose Ronald Acuna Jr. to a torn ACL. Last time they did, it worked out for them. They won the World Series. I'm not saying that's a good sign, but what are your thoughts on another year without Ronald Acuna Jr.?
It's going to be tough, not necessarily replacing the production that he had this year, because I don't think anybody would tell you that he's anything other than a disappointment this year. But the speed on the base paths was still there. And, I think a lot of folks around here assumed that he would get better along with Matt Olson and Austin Riley, and pretty much everybody's had a down season except Marcell Ozuna. So, I think the assumption was that he would be a part of that. It's disappointing. I think this Braves team is far more equipped to handle it than the one in 2021, even though they won the World Series. They had to go get Jorge Soler and Eddie Rosario and Jock Peterson. And so I don't think they're going to have to do something like that this year, assuming, Matt Olson stays hot and at least a couple players, start matching the back of their baseball card. But, I think it's disappointing for all of Major League Baseball. He's one of the most exciting players in the league, and, he brings excitement. But I do think that this team is more equipped to handle it, assuming a couple players start playing like they're supposed to be playing.
Yeah, and even with all of as you said, the offensive woes, they're still very comfortably a playoff team in the National League, and they have a good pitching staff. They haven't always stayed healthy, and they haven't stayed healthy again this year. But nobody's pitching staff is healthy. But they did bring up one of their top, if not their top prospect, in Spencer Schwellenbach. I have no idea if I said that correctly or not.
You did.
How about that? What a lucky stab at that it was for me. What are the expectations there? I actually also saw Braves fans saying it's time to sell Max Fried, or trade Max Fried at the deadline. They've given up. Some of these people, they're so nuts. But you know how fans are. What are your thoughts on Spencer so far through one start?
Yeah, he looked good. He gave up, one bad pitch to Lane Thomas yesterday, but he looked fine. I think that they're very excited about him. I wouldn't be surprised if they, at some point, move him back down to AAA, which is where he was supposed to be yesterday, and let other folks sort of rotate in and out of that spot. I thought AJ Smith-Shawver was going to take it, but the oblique strain he suffered in his only start, put a damper on that and slowed that down. So I think he's just now going to be part of one of that little bus trip from Gwinnett to Atlanta and back to Gwinnett. But he looked good. I know they're very confident in him, not just because of the stuff that he has, but also just the makeup that he has. He's one of those guys that just doesn't necessarily get too high or too low. And for a young guy, that's something that can be very, very useful. either as a starter or out of the bullpen. It wouldn't surprise me at all if you see more of him, not only as a starter, but if they start using him out of the bullpen as well, in situations where, the fifth starter, whether it's Bryce Elder or Darius Vines or whoever, goes for 3 or 4, and then you put Schellenbach at 3 and 4, or for 3 and 4. I think that ultimately is what they might do with that fifth spot in the rotation.
Yeah, and the truth is that for a guy, I remember David Price, when he first came up with the Tampa Bay Rays, he came up out of the bullpen, right? Yeah. Before he ever became a top starter, he came out of the bullpen, and that's a good way to get guys going. It probably is less wear and tear on their arms.
That's what Fried did.
Yep.
That's exactly what Fried did.
I mean, why not? All you got to do is cover the innings, and I think teams like the Rays and others have shown us that, you want to have, 2 or 3 top starters, but you still got to cover other games, and if it's covered by multiple pitchers going 2 or 3 innings or sometimes less, I'm not necessarily into the opener type of deal, but I don't necessarily have to have my 4th and 5th starters. This is not 1975 anymore.
Yeah,
you don't have
100%.
I don't have 100%. to have my 4th starter throwing 225 innings. Barrett Sallee, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, covers the Braves, also covers the Southeastern Conference. First of all, before I get to college football, are we all worried that the Phillies are just going to run away?
I said on the show yesterday that, that team's built to win the division. The Phillies are. It's kind of a role reversal from what the Braves are normally used to. It's the Phillies are made for the playoffs. The Braves are made for the regular season. I think it's the exact opposite. I don't see Philly going away anytime soon. Can the Braves still win the division? Yeah, they could. But right now, man, the Phillies, they're going to cool off at some point. But, at this point, they are they're filthy. They are really, really good. So, catching them, we'll see. But in the end, it might not matter. The Phillies knocked them out twice the last 2 seasons, and maybe the roles will be reversed.
Anything could happen in a short series. Literally anything could happen. You get hot, you get a good bullpen. Bullpens, to me, are the most important thing in the postseason anyway. Barrett Sallee. All right, let's get to the smothered and covered portion of your appearance here. I'm curious your thoughts on this, because we understand what revenue, the search for revenue is all about. So there was an SEC unnamed athletic director who says that he believes that the NCAA will soon allow sponsor logos on fields. I had 2 things that run through my head on this. Of course, why hasn't that happened before? And secondly, why does the NCAA control this? I just, isn't that, what's the difference between a sponsor logo on the stadium, right, or a sponsor name on the stadium, and being able to put, Buc-ee's, that truck stop, on the field? I don't understand it.
Well, Buc-ee's, of course, would be Tennessee. Like, if you're picking, who's going to be where, Buc-ee's will be Tennessee. It's crazy. It doesn't make a ton of sense. The NCAA has always had control over rules, and I guess that would fall under the rules. If you remember, during COVID, they extended the sideline for players because apparently they needed 15 more yards to prevent COVID from spreading. Sure. Despite the fact that they were next to each other all the time.
Social distancing. You couldn't social distance on the defensive line, though.
Right,
that would be a problem.
Right. The 35-yard buffer needed to be 45 because those 10 on either side would prevent all of it from happening. But, and they also had to approve patches for, whatever the cause may be. Mm-hmm. It's all about rules. That's just under their purview. Honestly, I don't think it's going to change all that much. I was one of those guys that when Major League Baseball started to allow it, I was like, oh, God, it's going to ruin the game. It's awful. And now that yellow patch for Quick Street on the Braves jerseys, I don't even care. I don't even notice. But we'll see. I mean, look, they have to find a way to make some money, because I know, like, everyone's like, oh, it's a big money, big business. Well, Texas A&M already laid off some staffers. Iowa State put a wrestling facility on hold because, they're going to start paying $15 to $20 million every single year to players. They've got to find a way to keep their budget sort of, balanced. And,
I know how they can do that. I know how they could find the money. we don't have to pay coaches $12 million. We don't.
Yes, that would be helpful.
We don't. The reason why that happened is because they had to, right?
Yeah,
because they've got to bury the money somewhere. So they bury it in, Alabama's coaching staff can have 20 different analysts, right? They have to bury the money. And I mean, something I've said for years about college football coaches specifically, that you're either underpaid or overpaid. Most coaches are overpaid. There are some, like Kirby Smart, and Nick Saban before him, who are probably underpaid, right?
Yep.
Because if you put them somewhere else, you could pay them $30 million, which is probably what they're worth, and they would produce greatness. But for the most part, most of the other coaches are not going to come close. Is there a more overpaid coach than Mario Cristobal at Miami?
Before Mel Tucker had his issues last year, Mel Tucker.
It's pretty close.
It was bad. It was bad. The idea to lock up Mel Tucker for Michigan State was it was dumb then. It's dumb. Obviously, it's dumb now for much different reasons. But yeah, that one was worse. But obviously, he's no longer there through actions of his own doing, and not necessarily what they didn't do on the field.
Yeah, though they were looking for a reason. That's what it always comes down to.
Yeah, they found one.
Right. We're looking for a reason to get rid of you. We found a good one in this case, but we were really trying to get out from under that contract. Barrett Sallee, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and the Smothered and Covered College Football podcast you can watch on YouTube. Before I let you go, the House versus the NCAA settlement, which will not prevent further lawsuits, no matter what the current attorneys are saying. It's awesome because if it has a cap in it, I understand players can opt in and opt out. It's going to leave yourself open to further antitrust lawsuits. It just will. That's fine going forward. We'll let somebody else deal with further lawsuits. The NCAA is going to lose those as well. Do you think there are going to be schools within the two power leagues, the SEC and the Big Ten, that are soon going to be distributing close to $100 million in revenue to their member schools? Do you think there will be schools within those two leagues that are going to not opt out, but not come close to offering the $20 to $22 million to athletes?
No, I think in those two leagues, they are going to spend as much as they need to spend. As whatever they can spend, they will. But I still think I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to what folks think. $20 million when you're spreading it out over all sports is really not that much, especially if a quarterback costs $12 million, right? So in the grand scheme of things, that spending $20 million a year is not going to be something that they really have any issue with, because they know they have to. And yeah, it's a big chunk of change out of their total revenue that they generate. But I think a lot of it will still be funneled through collectives. So they're gonna. I'm fascinated to see if that $15 to $20 million has anything to do with football at all. I know if I was running things, I would do my best to keep the collectives basically solely focused on the revenue sports, and using that money that's now being allowed to bolster other programs, because that to me makes more financial sense, especially if these collectives are have unlimited power and unlimited revenue. Just to me, why not just continue to use them?
Yeah, somebody asked me, this is going to send money underground. I'm like, nah, man, they're just going to find legal ways to get to go beyond the 20 or 22 million. And look, I am for whatever gets players what they have deserved to get over the last several decades, as the money in college sports has completely gone bananas. Barrett Sallee, I appreciate your time at Barrett Sallee on Twitter. Thank you, man. We'll do it again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Barrett Sallee here on The Adam Gold Show.